Moore's Law is a name that was given to a projection I made actually in 1965. I was given the chore of predicting what would happen in semiconductor components over the next 10 years for the 35th anniversary edition of Electronics magazine. That was the early day of integrated circuits. The most complicated ones on the market had something of the order of 30 transistors and resistors. We were working on things of about twice that complexity, about 60 components. And I just plotted these on a piece of semi-log paper and noticed that since the first planar transistor was introduced in 1959, with integrated circuits following essentially on the same technology, that the number of components on an integrated circuit was about doubling every year. I wanted to make the point that integrated circuits were going to be the cheap way to buy electronics sometime down the road. Up until 1965, integrated circuits were expensive. They were used principally in military systems where the weight and power advantages were most important. But they were not inexpensive compared with what you could build using separate transistors and resistors. I could see at that time that the way the technology was going, that we were going to be able to decrease the cost dramatically. So I did this 10-year extrapolation, doubling every year, predicting the complexity of integrated circuits would be 1,000 times as complex in 1975 as it was in 1965. That is, we'd have of the order of 60,000 transistors on an integrated circuit instead of just 60. And that this would be the cheapest way to buy electronics.
Moore's Law states that transistor density will double every 2 years on integrated circuits, as represented here on a linear scale. Carried out over a 10-year path, that growth can be charted in this manner. On a logarithmic scale, as done by Moore in 1965, the rate of growth is represented as a straight line. This is an exponential growth, and when viewed over a 40-year period, what has occurred is a million-fold increase in density, with the bulk of that growth occurring in the past decade alone.
Now, while I was sure of the trend, I had no idea at all that the prediction would be in any respect accurate. But amazingly, we stayed on that curve for the first decade. And one of my friends, I believe it was Dr. Carver Mead, a professor at Caltech, dubbed it Moore's Law someplace along that time scale. I don't remember exactly when, but that's how Moore's Law came about.
The whole nature of that curve as being some sort of law is a very interesting phenomenon, because it's not a phenomenon like a law of physics. It's really a phenomenon about what people are willing to let themselves believe.
And of course, we didn't stay on that doubling every year. In fact, in 1975, updating the progress we had made, I gave a paper at one of the IEEE conferences where I predicted that the slope was going to change to doubling every 2 years, since we had lost one of the big factors. We hadn't lost it, we had taken full advantage of it. There wasn't any more room to pack things more densely on the chip.
So the question arises, what limits the continuation of Moore's Law?
No physical thing can continue to change exponentially forever. The nature of the exponential is it grows so big or so small so rapidly that you come to some kind of a physical limit. Even in our present technology, some of the layers are only a few molecular layers thick. But as we approach the atomic dimensions, the materials don't behave the same way anymore. We get a lot of new leakage currents coming in, standard circuit design doesn't work, and eventually we really come across something fundamental, that there's a size below which the electronic functions don't work. So there's a long way to go before we've run out the string of what we can do with solid-state electronics.